Yo, yo, yo. What's good? What's good? It's Stormy B Man, and I am back. Welcoming you to Kung Fu Film Focus for this Thursday, May 2nd, 2024. This is a focus featuring a classic from 1976, a vehicle starring a then very young Jackie Chan in a starring role. The feature, Shaolin Wooden Men. Yeah, this little production was conceptualized by Lo Wei, film director who was noted and famous for Bruce Lee's two first Hong Kong martial art films since returning to his home country back in 1971. The Big Boss, to be followed up by Fist of Fury. And those films made Lo Wei a breakout film director, as it did Lee a breakout film star. He would go on into the mid-70s to found his own company, Lo Wei Productions. And after the death of Lee in 1973, he was amongst many film directors and producers from studios who sought to find a martial arts film star who could fill the void left by Lee. A mighty task. Shaolin Wooden Men would be a film vehicle where he would use Jackie Chan, who was a noted Hong Kong stuntman at the time, had small roles in films where he usually played like one of the gang men or one in a crowd, so to speak, and also doubled for some of the main stars when some of their movements and actions required the skill set of a true martial stuntman. So Shaolin Wooden Men would be one of those vehicles that Jackie Chan was given a shot by Lo Wei. What was it that made Lo Wei consider Jackie is very interesting. Maybe it could be explained had he been given an opportunity to explain that. But see, in this modern era of social media and everything, quite naturally, these are the type of questions that can cross a director's path and so forth. But Lo Wei passed in the 90s, and to my knowledge, he never really gave an interview to explain that. Because though he made quite a few films for Lo Wei, Jackie didn't become a star until he stepped out onto the independent film circuit, or was loaned out to the independent film circuit, where he made a lot of headway when he starred in Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, a film that was choreographed by Yuen Wu Ping, followed up by Drunken Monkey, or Drunken Master. And those two films catapulted Jackie to similar heights that Lee experienced from his first two films with Lo Wei. But he became a man who would eventually replace Bruce Lee in star status and action film status, though he was nowhere near the martial artist that Lee was. Chan elected to not emulate or imitate Lee. He elected to concentrate more on physical actions in his films, sort of a Hong Kong Buster Keaton. Lots of action, some martial action, and some comedy. He succeeded because it was something refreshing and new for the audiences. And he did not emulate Bruce Lee. So people welcomed that, to not be a guy who was just out there trying to be another clone of Lee. So we'll talk about Shaolin Wooden Men a little bit this evening, and hopefully some of you will gain some of the knowledge about this film, what it meant going forward, and how things would change for Jackie going forward as well. So it's kind of a revisiting of a time when Kung Fu films were really looking for something refreshing. Shaolin films came into prominence roughly around the same time. The Shaw Brothers Studio produced a film called Shaolin Temple, and it starred some of their biggest stars, Tai Lung, David Chang, Alexander Fuxing, Chikwa Chung, and these men who are very familiar within the Shaw Studio played various heroes that were noted from the Shaolin Temple. So Shaolin was coming into prominence during this particular era of filmmaking, and it gave action choreographers something refreshing to consider as far as the action, because they can actually take some of the Shaolin styles, Lohan, Wu-Tang, the priests who were abbots and monks who taught martial abilities following the animal patterns, and culminating in what we would later come to call shapes from the Shaolin Temple. Shapes being the label for various styles. So that was something refreshing. and different from what Lee was doing. And so it began. Now, Shaolin Wooden Men, again, I said, was directed and produced by Lo Wei. Lo Wei was actually a cinema heartthrob from the 50s and had his own little career before later moving into directing. And he was originally with the Shaw Brothers Studios in the 60s himself. He was coerced away from the Shaw Studios when Run Run Shaw's major right-hand man, Raymond Chow, elected to leave the studio for creative differences. And Lo Wei was one of the directors that he brought with him to Golden Harvest Studios. And Lo Wei wasted no time in directing films for Golden Harvest. Many of his films people may know or they may not. It depends on how versed you are in Kung Fu films. One of the things that he was noted for was some of the sword films that he began to direct for Golden Harvest. Those films brought him to success. Films like The Brothers Five. There were other films like Vengeance of a Snow Girl, Black Tavern. Other films that were noted were like Kung Fu Girl, A Man Called Tiger, and of course the Bruce Lee films. Lo Wei was a very egotistical director, very full of himself, and thought himself to be the first $1 million director of Hong Kong. He was not, but his persona was that. It was represented as such. He passed away in January of 1996. But he was definitely influential on the martial art films. He was linked, allegedly, with triads during his life. Credited with over 135 films as an actor and 60 films as a director, over 30 films as a writer, and over 45 films as a producer. He was a very busy man. Shaolin Wooden Men is a 1976 Hong Kong action film, and the film had several different titles. It was known as 36 Wooden Men, Shaolin Chamber of Death, Shaolin Wooden Men, Young Tiger's Revenge, and Wooden Man. One of the reasons for so many titles is because of where the films may have been released regionally. There were certain areas that these films could be released, and provinces, which is like what we would call cities or countrysides, suburbs in our nation, provinces over in Hong Kong and China. So depending on what region you may have lived when films were shown, they may have had titles that could be more familiar to the audience or regions where they premiered. Now, understand that I read you the titles of these films in English, but when they were scripted in traditional Chinese language, be it Mandarin or Cantonese, the titles had a different meaning according to the script, the words. So we might have get this title such as Shaolin Wooden Men, but in Chinese, it would probably read somewhat different, you know. So that's one thing I wanted to point out about that. And it may not even mean that in Chinese. I don't know Chinese, so I won't even speculate. But I'm just explaining one of the reasons for experiencing multiple titles from these films. According to a report that I was able to read on the history of this film, it was released November 10th, 1976. And in Hong Kong, it was in Mandarin, and it won a box office estimation of 1 million US in Asia and sold over 400,000 tickets overseas. It was in the midst of the Kung Fu film craze, and people went to see this film. Not so much for Jackie because he was just becoming a leading person in martial art films, but because Lo Wei was the director and he had a propensity to be churning out a ton of martial art films. So there's also two versions of this film, which is you had a 1976 version and a 1980 version. Two differently edited versions of this film have been made. The Mandarin version from '76 and a slightly shortened version featuring a Cantonese dub in 1980. The cut is used for all known releases to date. In terms of the score, the English dub was on all available releases and matches the Cantonese version. However, it is not known if an English dub was ever recorded to sync to the Mandarin version. When playing the Mandarin audio on existing Cantonese versions of this release, during a scene after Little Mute, who was played by Jackie Chan, has tattooed his arms, the music jumps ahead to another part of the track. When played with the Cantonese soundtrack, the music plays without that problem, revealing the segment of the music cut in the Mandarin soundtrack. During the final fight scene, there are some abrupt jump cuts, and as a result, the sound effects drop out of sync. It is possible that the film's action was tightened up in preparation for a release or the 1980 re-release, as it appears rather slowly executed by the actors. Sometimes filmmakers will do things like in the case with Jackie Chan for this film. His stardom came toward the late 70s and early 80s. So Lo Wei re-released this film because he wanted to cash in on Jackie's success. It was as simple as that. So Jackie starred in this film along with veteran martial arts actor and action man Kam Kang. Kam Kang was a man who played a lot of various character roles. He was noted as a monk in Shaolin Plot. He also played a monk in the film forgive me, the title escapes me at the moment, but he had a famous role. Let me look up his filmography real quick because I feel bad that I can't think of the name of the film off the top of my head, but it's a film role where Kam Kang, he was noted in this film for that role. Let me run across, I'll have it for you in just a second. Wow, I don't see it in his filmography. Nope, I don't see it right now. And that's not good because this particular film roll now see, I'm not going to be happy until I find this film. 1 second. There's another actor I can look up because he starred in the film with Cam Kang, and he was the star of that film. Yeah, let's see here. We pull him up, and I bet you I find that film now. Let's see. There are so many kung fu films, you guys, you have no idea. There it is. See, now when I looked up Cam Kang's filmography, in his filmography, they do not have him listed in this film, but he played a monk in this film. And the film that I was looking for was Shaolin Kung Fu Mystagogue. Yeah, you see? And that's one of my favorite films. I like that film. But Cam Kang, you guys may know him as the blind monk from Master of the Flying Guillotine. He was the villain in Master of the Flying Guillotine. He had the guillotine. He was going around snatching heads with venom. And I loved it. Some of you have loved it too. I did a kung fu film focus on Master of the Flying Guillotine, an excellent film from that era. Doris Longcher is also a lead actress in this film. She's played in a number of martial art films where she plays a female martial artist, sometimes a daughter or sister in distress, but she fought in some films. Her action scenes were moderate. She wasn't on the level of Chong Pei Pei or let's say Angela Mao, but she still was an actress who starred in a number of these films in the mid-70s. A lot of Taiwan and independent films. So that's what she did. But she was out there and also joined by the veteran actor, Mu Tin. Mu Tin is a guy that plays a villain in this film. And Jackie's character, Little Mute, faces off against him later in the film. Now, according to the plot of the film, Jackie plays a character named Little Mute. And Little Mute is a new Shaolin student who is a mute. He doesn't speak, he can hear, but he can't talk, and he doesn't make any sound or anything. He struggles to keep up with the other students and to compete with the grueling tasks assigned to him by his instructor. He is haunted by the memory of his father's murder at the hands of a masked bandit who is skilled in martial arts. That masked man turns out to be Yoon Tin. And when he meets up with Jackie at the end of the film, he's able to figure out who the masked man that murdered his father when he was a child was. One night, a drunken monk leads Little Mute to a secret cave behind a waterfall. A man is imprisoned there. Over time, Little Mute befriends the violent prisoner by bringing him food and wine that he steals from the monastery. He learns that the prisoner is a deadly martial artist who is developing a technique called the Lion's Roar, which he will use to escape his captivity. Little Mute convinces the prisoner to train him. The prisoner's style aims to kill the opponent as fast as possible. A Shaolin nun sees Little Mute practicing these killing techniques. She tells him that martial arts are not for killing, rather they are for self-development with self-defense employed only when necessary with minimal violence. She trains him in the gliding snake style, the ideals of which clash with those of the prisoner's killing style. Nevertheless, Little Mute continues to study both. Finally, the prisoner judges that Little Mute is ready to attempt to pass the test of the Shaolin Wooden Men Alley, a narrow hallway containing 36 Shaolin wooden men, which are mechanical wooden dummies that attack anyone who enters the hallway. Typically in Shaolin lore, the Wooden Man Hall was where the various monks would test their kung fu. If they wanted to leave the temple, they would have to go through Wooden Man Alley and take on those Shaolin monks and machines. If they successfully completed that task, they would go to the ending door, which was guarded by a huge fiery cauldron. And they would have to lift that cauldron in front of the door and move it to the side. On the rim of the cauldron were a tiger on one side, emblem, and a dragon on the other side, and then like some kind of other beast claws or fists around the front rim. So when you lifted it with your arms, you had to lift it up to your chest and move it to the side. That would burn a tattoo of those animals into your forearms and your chest. And when those men who completed that task would leave Shaolin Temple, if ever they were exposed publicly, people would know that that is where they came from, the Shaolin Temple, because they recognized the tattoos. That's another one of the reasons why the monks wore their robes, gold and red robes, to keep themselves covered up. This shot over me here is a shot of Jackie practicing, where one of the monks is teaching him his martial arts skill. In the film, you get a chance to see some of the other temple students who try Wooden Man Alley, and they're very unsuccessful with completing the task. So when Little Mute is able to finally make it through there, everyone is astonished because his kung fu wasn't as good as any of the others, but they never knew that he was getting those lessons from the imprisoned monk played by Cam Kang. Very interesting. This film was a little bit ahead of its time because it was a serious vehicle for Jackie, who wasn't really a known actor at that time, only a stuntman. And so he didn't have the star power that he would later pick up, because maybe a film like this in his later portion after becoming a star would have been more readily acceptable and received. That's one of the reasons why Lo Wei re-released the film in 1980, because Snake and the Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master were released in like 78. So you could see where there was a difference in Jackie's acting career up to those two films that shot him to superstardom. So naturally, Lo Wei was like, I'll re-release this film, re-edit it, and send it out again, and the people will spend money because it's Jackie. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way for Lo Wei. He was a money-grabbing type of a guy. He didn't look to soundly do things. He was kind of quick about it. One of the reasons that he and Bruce Lee were at odds during the making of their films, because Lee just considered him an overbearing personality, and Lee had a strong personality himself, but Lee's cinematic approach to what he was doing with these films were far ahead of the ideals of the directors and producers of that time. So Lee, he had innovative ideas that a lot of people just didn't foresee. I'll give you an example of that, and then I'll go to the chat for a roll call, because I'm not trying to forget anybody, but I was just trying to, give you guys some information on these films. One of the things that Lee pioneered in his films was, During fight scenes where punches and kicks are thrown in sequences, Lee would touch his opponent, but he would tell them, don't react until you feel the touch. If you react too soon, you could get injured. If you react too late, it's a no good shot. So his timing was excellent and his control was excellent. So that was one of the things that he did innovatively during the time. And there were other film artists who had heard of this and they began to try it. And guys were getting hurt on the set of films all the time because you had guys who didn't have control over their punches and kicks, and they were just blazing through one another on the film sets, causing injuries and everything. It was really funny because no one was doing what Bruce was doing before him, and even when they would try to do what he was doing while he was around, they were still jacking each other up. Another thing that he brought to the cinema was, like, when you do make contact with the guy, he believed in putting talcum powder on the clothing of the artist. Like if he kicks the guy and it touches his gi or his clothing, dust would fly off, giving the illusion of power. Even though Bruce would kick with power or punch with power, that contact that'll make the powder explode off of somebody's body or whatever. No one was doing that before Lee. It was his idea, and he brought that. And now we see it all the time and don't even think much of it. But it was something that didn't exist on film, especially Kung Fu film, before Lee. Let me go to the chat for a moment and see who we got in the building. We got the fam out there. What's happening, you guys? I'm sorry, I meant to turn my music down a little more. I don't think it's low enough. I'll turn it down a half a decibel, because I'm sorry, I doing multiple things at once. We had the Jab Jamboree out there saying salute Storm. Mr. Shelton is out there saying, I'm a karate man. What's good with you, Mr. Shelton? He says, hey, man, I'm a Mississippi karate man. Okay. Shogun 76, the Shogun of Harlem, is back with us saying salute Sensei and the chat. Shogun, you hip on Jackie's Shaolin Wooden Men? Universal Truth is in the building saying salute Sensei. Tay Tay, the real queen of MMA and combat talk, is out there saying seafood. And she's asking, did he do Rumble in the Bronx? Yeah, Jackie, that was one of his international films, one of his first international films, Rumble in the Bronx. Healer the teacher is out there with us saying salute. What's good with you, Healer? Make sure you contact them CyberLink people, man, and get that underway so they can lift that from what we talked about. Adrian Vid is out there saying salute, Sensei. Appreciate the gems. Off topic, did you by chance see Hero and Fearless by Jet Li? Here we go. Adrian Viet, let me say this. I don't do off topic, bro. Stay on topic. If you're not versed in what I'm talking about, because I bring this information, a lot of people are not. So guess what Stormy is doing? Class is in session. Focus up. You understand? You don't take me off subject because you may not know or have interest in the subject. You can always return when it's something that you think you do know, but you will gain a genuine education about this being on topic, even by asking questions about the topic, Because I do respect that Jet Li has a filmography. I've already done a Kung Fu film focus on several of his films. Okay, you may not be aware of that, but I have, So even if I'm talking about Jet Li, I wouldn't be talking about Jackie Chan. You feel me? And even though they played in a film together, I wouldn't do that unless something that I'm saying relates to the friendship that they established after they played in a film together, or the fact that many film fans wanted to see them together on screen for almost 15 years before they finally did it. Yeah. So, that's just me and how I hold court, brother. No harm, no foul. Sean is out there saying, oh, it's on Prime. Yeah, it's out there. Shogun is saying, hell yeah. So you say you're familiar with it, Shogun? The Shogun of Harlem? That's good, man. He says, Jackie did some of my favorite movies when he was younger. You know what's interesting about Jackie? I have almost all of his kung fu films. But I hated Jackie Chan. Isn't that amazing? I have almost all of his kung fu films. Some of his international action films, I didn't care for. But the kung fu joints, I have them in my film library. And even more so, I couldn't stand Jackie. But it's just to show how prominent he was in the martial art film genre. So if I have an appreciation for the genre, of course I would be familiar with his work. I remember when I first saw Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, it was here in Chicago at an old theater on the near north side that is no more. That and Drunken Master played together, and they had a late night matinee. I think the film started around 9:30 or 10:30 p.m. and went on into the wee hours of the morning because they played back to back. And that was something else because they were in Chinese with English subtitles. So I saw them uncut at that time. Now I have an appreciation for it now because at the time when those films were released in the US, and I have to say that had to have been roughly 1984, 85, something like that. So about almost 7-8 years after they were originally released in Hong Kong. But you know, Jackie Chan was starting to take America by storm by coming over here and playing in films like The Cannonball Run, then the Big Brawl, and then films like Rumble in the Bronx that Tay was mentioning earlier. So those are the kind of details that I can share with you guys because, you know, I'm a little long in the tooth and I've been around to see some of this stuff. But I don't know it all regarding Kung Fu. I know quite a bit because there was a certain area that didn't captivate my interest, and I'm just now starting to get into it. And that's kind of like the films that were made where, like Sammo Hung's Spooky Encounters, where they're dealing with the spiritual aspect of Kung Fu and zombies and stuff like that. It's like I kind of got into that very, very late, way after the genre had come and gone. Adrian says, fine, okay. Yeah, man, I mean, we're not going to, be off topic like that. But getting back to Jackie in this film, his Kung Fu is very interesting in here because you can see he trying to execute the choreography according to how he was shown by veteran Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee was an action director, a film director, and a martial arts choreographer that in the thick of the Kung Fu film genre, or Kung Fu film boom that they called it, he choreographed films like The Hot, The Cool, and The Vicious with Tan Tao Lang and Don Wong and Chang Yi. Those films like that, he was action choreographer for, and a few others. But what was really interesting is that Tommy Lee was a guy who choreographed the film of the style and techniques of the Bashers, what we're most familiar with these hand-to-hand combat films of that era. He was known for that. He played a villain in a couple of roles, and also he would always play someone that didn't really look like himself. He would play like a guy with a hunch in his back, or have a crazy blonde or white-haired wig on and stuff like that. So Tommy Lee was a very interesting individual that wanted to see himself in costume, you know, more than just as he was. He was a rather thin man, but a pretty darn good martial artist at that, and choreographer. Sean says, The Foreigner could have been better, but I'm definitely checking this out this weekend. Okay. Shogun says, we was watching Jackie Chan way before Rumble in the Bronx. Absolutely, Shogun, absolutely. Mind of Mansa Musa, LLC in the building, saying salute to the wise one, the sensei, 100. Yeah, okay. And Sean says, I've heard that name before. Oh yeah, Tommy Lee, definitely a guy who has been around. I'm surprised I forgot to put his picture in my queue when I was talking, when I was setting my my visuals up for tonight's show. But even in this image I got over me here with Jackie fighting the wooden men in the wooden alley, he's throwing a high kick, and if you notice, it's like his leg is way up in the air, which shows his flexibility. But Jackie, his kung fu didn't look good sometimes. Excuse me. He was noted for not wanting to perform exactly accurately as the choreographies wanted him to. When it came down to flips and tumbling and stuff like that, he did that with perfection. But to follow the action choreographer's desires, Jackie just had his own thing about that, which is why when he became a big star, he wasn't trying to choreograph traditional kung fu like he was doing before he became a star. When he became a star, he also took over the choreography reins of his films. And he wanted more action and stunts than he did martial prowess or progress. So there was a change and a trade-off. The only one who seemingly could use Jackie at his best was Yuen Wu-Ping, because he found ways to communicate with Jackie, because Jackie, like I said, was more of a Buster Keaton than he was a John Wayne. And if anyone wants to know what I mean by that analogy, you know, John Wayne was the wind up and punch the light out type guy. Bruce Lee was the John Wayne of Hong Kong. He could go in there and wind up with a punch or a kick and knock his opponents out straight away. Buster Keaton would trick his opponents into things and make them fall off of rooftops or cliffs, or go down a hill or into a cavern or something, by making it look like it was all a mistake. Well, Jackie's choreography was more on the lines of Buster Keaton. He wasn't a badass, but he came out on top because he fooled the other guys and used his athleticism and smarts, headiness, to come out on top with these guys. That was something that he utilized to separate himself from Bruce Lee, and it helped him become a bigger star as a result of it, because a great deal of creativity went behind what Jackie was doing when he would do those type of things. Yeah, Sean says, it didn't seem as polished versus just looking like a fight. Yeah, that's what I mean. Jackie was, you know, and I always felt like Jackie had the ability to play a character of depth and seriousness, but it would require the right type of script writing for him. He preferred to do the comedies and lightheartedness. He would have moments of seriousness or some kind of dramatic incidents, but the films wouldn't be built around that. The dramatic moments would be minimal, just like in certain other drama films, comedy element can be minimal. So Jackie kind of took that iconic thing and turned it on its head. This image above me here is he removing that hot burning cauldron from in front of the doorway in the Shaolin temple after he completed the task of defeating the wooden men in the alley. If you notice, he's burning into himself the tattoos by carrying it with his forearms up against his chest, and he takes it and turns it to the side. The television show Kung Fu showed Kwai Chang Caine doing the same thing when he was leaving the Shaolin temple. We've seen it through other Shaolin films like 18 Bronze Men and 18 Bronze Men Part 2. We saw scenes like this and several other films, The Blazing Temple and such. This is something that was noted during these times when the monks would be trying to leave the Shaolin temple. So the final fight scene sees Jackie square off against the bad guy that killed his father, and he's receiving some assistance from the monks from the temple and everything, but Jackie is more than capable of taking care of himself by this point. Little Mute, they call him, when he runs across the murderer of his parents. Pardon me, had to take a little sip of my water there. I throat is feeling a little dry because I'm talking so much. But the choreography here is decent for the time. I would identify Sean, Jackie's choreography style at this time in his career. It was almost like he was posing and posturing when he would fight. So I can understand what you mean, like it doesn't look like a fight, because when he does something, it's like pause, do this, pause, and it's not fluid. And I think that's why Yuan Wu Ping films with Jackie look better as far as the choreography, because he could incorporate Jackie's ability to move. Because Jackie was an action guy. He was a stunt man. He could flip. He could tumble. He could do flip-flops. He could do splits. He could do leg bends. He could, do stretching type of things. He could even juggle a little bit. And so he would be put in circumstances through Yuan Wu Ping's choreography that would showcase his natural athleticism, and that would prevail and make his action scenes look more tantalizing. Also, there were not a lot of guys who could do what he could do unless they were stuntmen, and at that time the stuntmen were not the stars. They were still behind the scenes. Jackie was the first stuntman to become a star. Does anyone have any questions as we go through this and get ready to round things out for Shaolin Wooden Men? If you have questions, I would be more than happy to try to answer some for you. I appreciate you guys listening to me this evening. These Kung Fu film focuses are successful, man, because even if we don't have a huge viewing audiences when I go live, after a few days, man, it's like hundreds of people check these joints out. So I take it that people tune in from other parts of the world. Sometimes they'll come because they see the title of the film and they think, oh, that's the movie or a movie. And then they realize that Stormy is just doing a review. And then those who have watched my reviews in the past and they figure that they're decent, they come back and watch some more. It's that simple, Not a lot on it, So See, I know some people they be wanting to see me do the Venoms and stuff like that. Yeah, I will get around to Venom films, but the Venoms weren't the only ones. These films that I have been talking about that would be considered independent films and lower budget films by smaller film companies, but still who have big artists featured in them, it rounds out the genre because there are so many kung fu films that the average person hasn't seen, and the person who may have professed, oh, I love kung fu movies, but you know the Shaw Brothers and you may know some of the Golden Harvest films. But then we get to talking about certain other films and it's like, oh, I never knew about that one. I never knew. It's because they were only dialed in where, like if you were a fisherman and they say, hey, they're biting over here, so you run over there with your gear and you fish right there, instead of exploring out in other areas and spaces where maybe somebody doesn't really go, and you find out the biting over there is every bit as good, if not better. Now, I know my brother, 78 Sports TV, he's a fishing man, so he would know what I'm saying when I say that. That's why you find you a spot, you don't tell everybody about it, huh? Yeah, they be like, hey, I'm going over here, I'm catching me some bullheads, they doing this, they doing that. Oh, really? Yeah, okay, I'll join you. I'll catch up with you a little later. And you go to your spot, and then y'all meet back up later, and he'd be like, man, how'd you do today? You'd be like, man, I didn't do too good. I just caught these, you showing what you got. You'd be like, dang, man, you did good. Uh-huh. It can happen that way. It can happen. Shit. Yeah, man. So, but I asked if you guys had any questions or anything, but nobody seems to be. And I seen a couple people have dropped off. And that's okay because we're rounding out things, coming to the end. And, Stormy can always use this as an opportunity to get the hell out of Dodge, huh? Because I know how it is sometimes. You guys be in class, but you don't want to participate. You just be looking for a way out, huh? To get outside. Let's go look at some girls, huh? Uh-huh. And you go out there and girls ain't thinking about you, huh? You ain't washed up under your armpits or nothing, and she think that you smell like you've been boiling a pot of onions under your armpits, huh? And you need more than a couple of Tic Tacs, so she ain't gonna pay you no attention, huh? So you might as well go back inside and watch some kung fu films. Yeah, that's what I say, huh? Does it make you mad? It'll make me mad. Yeah. But that's what's up, huh? That's what's up. You guys get ready to head up out of here. Like I said, I appreciate who decided to come in and, check Stormy out. Some of y'all, just sitting around waiting on something. But hey, it's okay. It's okay. A lot of people fail classes without participating. Just know that, huh? You won't be the first and you won't be the last, huh? PGH Big Dog in the building. What's good? As usual, late to class, F+. Uh-huh. Well, I didn't get a notice, Stormy. Huh? Well, I'm letting you know now you're late, and it's F+. So there's your notice, huh? Yeah, Stormy will still talk shit, even in the end. You know what I'm saying? But that'll about do it for this evening. Some of you will catch me on the replays, some won't. But I just thought I'd come out here and talk about Shaolin Wooden Men, man. Nothing wrong with that. Shout out to the mighty LDBC. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.